So I'm excited to see what designs you guys can come up with, because you only have 4 more days.
What's the last?
It's the same as 1.5.
What's that?
It's a negative number.
Yeah. Yeah, 'cause it's talking about this way or that way. It's the, what is it, the y-axis? X-axis? Something like that. Yeah, so it's the x-axis. Math. But yeah, so the basic idea is tug of war, you want the smallest score possible. Cruise control, you want the smallest score possible. Sink or swim, you want the highest score possible. Steady as she goes, you want the lowest score possible. Rate of knots, you want the highest score possible. Long haul, your highest score. Push the boat up, highest score. Too close, the highest score. I must admit, Too Close for Comfort is one of my favorite games because it's basically it's stupid. You're going to an area of less and less water. You have to get as close to land as possible. It needs to be light, right? It has to be light. It also has to have enough fuel to get where you need to go. So that's a kind of interesting design challenge because more fuel equals more weight. So you have to be efficient. Efficiency is the name of the game. Right. So reforming the industrial world. Have some words. Whoa, much words. So wow.
Wait, what? We're taking notes?
Yes. Yes.
Do that after you're showing all the stuff.
I know, such excitement. Well, because I got to give you some time to ponder it and apply your designs better. Reading. Yes. It's nothing I don't deal with every single day. No worries. Heck, even my dog was giving me sass the other day. It's like, oh, and move. He sits down and goes, like, don't you sass me, dog. I think everyone on that board secretly paranoid. Someone's gonna be like, I busted your score 3 times over. Like, they're gonna get Friday. Be like, curses.
If you're gonna be on Friday, that way he can't beat you. You wouldn't know your score.
True.
That'd be a good idea.
True. The thing is, you have to understand is you guys turning your scores 5th period. I have 6th, 7th, and 8th to mess about with it.
So right when
But you should be working.
Expect a meeting.
What's that?
Right when the bell rings, you won't expect a meeting.
Yeah, once the bell rings, it's done.
I might run over real quick if I get something.
It's like, wait! I must admit, I will be a little shocked if someone like really destroys my scores. I think, if anything, it's going to be like, if like on Sink or Swim, someone's got like last 70 crates. You're like, fair enough.
What do you get when you win? Nothing.
Right.
You get nothing.
I mean, I guess I get to lord it over you for the next 3 months, but that's about it. February, March, April, May. I mean, 4 if you count March. I mean, 4 if you count February.
So we just began.
Right. So I guess it does count. It's gonna be fast though. What is it? The 3rd quarter ends in March. All right. Okay, good. So we get these words. You good? Count it on. Oh.
Get anywhere. Like, we're gonna talk weird.
Yeah, of course. None of this has to do with the thing I'm talking about. I'm just putting them on there. It's like words. How's the temp in here, guys? Is it hot? Perfectly. Maybe a little bit closer. So we have to cut. This isn't telling me it's overheat. Right? It did actually tell me I didn't. This is becoming my sensor, like how hot it is. It's like, I'm hot. All right. It whines more than you guys do. I know, it's unbelievable, but all right, so let's talk life during the industrial age. As you guys know, life is going to be improving over time during the industrial age. By the end of the Industrial Revolution, people's lives are improved dramatically. For one thing, people have access to more food. They have better clothes. They're living in better homes. Technology makes life a lot better for people. They also, by the end of the Industrial Revolution, are working fewer hours and having a more stable lifestyle. That being said, it's going to be a long way till we get there. You know, it's 100 years of development. At the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, life is pretty terrible for a lot of folks. Most people are living in pretty crappy areas of town. Urbanization was caused by so many people moving off of farms, there weren't enough houses. So people tend to crowd into areas and live quite a few people in a relatively small area. Take this room, for instance. This room can hold maybe 3 families.
What?
This room, 3 or 4 families.
You said families, how many people in the room?
5 to 7.
This would fit more. This would fit like the whole school.
I think that's a bit of an exaggeration.
No, if you really wanted to fit that.
I mean,
I suppose that's true.
Yeah.
I suppose if you just line people up like sardines, you could manage that. But let's be honest. Let's talk really living like that.
Oh, we have to live like that?
Yes.
Oh, you know, just.
No. This is your house, and you share it with 4 families. Yeah. This right here. It's where you live, man. Now let's be honest. Think about like your family and your home, and how often you maybe feel cramped. You know? All right. There's no way. It's like you don't get away from your family. You're there constantly. Every single thing is shared. Everybody else. There's no privacy. It does not exist. Yeah. So that means that you get out as much as possible. You have kids who want to play, they play outside. Which often means in the street. These are called tenements. Basically, that means apartments, more or less. But they kind of are like the negative connotation of that. They're kind of run down, grimy, and gross. They're overcrowded. They're worn down. They don't have good ventilation. They're kind of cesspools of disease. You know, whenever you pack a whole bunch of people into a small area, they get sick. You know, I'm sure you've experienced this when like someone in your family gets sick. Everybody gets sick. Maybe that's not your experience. That's certainly my experience. Especially because the kids tend to give it back and forth to each other. So it's probably worse than the other system. But suffice it to say, it is not exactly the nicest thing to have happen.
That's ridiculous that like somebody could get sick like 2 or 3 times a week.
Well, they got to recover from it, but yeah, I mean, you know. You got to understand when you really think about it, this is the kind of gross thing is you're constantly encountering bacteria and things like that. You've got bacteria in at all times. It's just most of the time you can handle it. Whenever you're sick, it's those rare times you can't. And your body is constantly under attack.
That's so sad. We're being attacked.
It just means you're a baller. Like, what is a disease? What you want, son? You done? You got this? All the things that are recorded. Let's talk where people work. Factories are basically 3 things: dark, dirty, dangerous. You don't want to work there. But you have to, because really there's no alternative. You know, you can't just decide to starve. I mean, I guess you could if you die. That's generally bad form. We don't like that. They aren't very well lit. They often have particulates. And the fact is everybody works. You know, folks are getting paid such low wages that if they don't have their children work, they don't have enough food to eat, or they don't have enough to pay rent. So they have to resort to child labor. You know, this really wasn't seen as that big a deal because, you know, kids work on the farm all the time. But let's be clear. Farm work for children is very different than working in a factory. Many children were maimed. Many children were killed by machines, by accidents, and basically that would cripple them for the rest of their lives. And the other thing is, factories did not hold any accountability for these injuries. If you got injured working on one of their machines, they simply fired you and replaced you. That was possible because of the incredibly high supply of workers. There were way more workers than there were jobs available. And so people were desperate. They were willing to accept anything as long as they were making some money. Think about it this way. If your alternative is no money or little money, you take little money. They didn't have a choice. So what we're going to see happen is quite a few instances of anger and frustration with the way that the system's set up. There's a lot of class anger that goes on between the various classes. The working class is angry at the middle class. And so the middle class tends to be the factory owners. They control these factories. And so they blame them for all the things that go wrong in terms of injuries and factories for low wages, all this stuff. The middle class is angry and frustrated with the noble class, the upper class, the old money, if you will. Partially it's because the upper class has a lot of privileges that they don't get, they don't have, and they feel oppressed even though they're just as wealthy, if not wealthier, than some of the nobility. They're still kind of considered like second-class citizens, even after all these revolutions. The nobles kind of look down on everybody else, to be honest. They look down on the middle class as basically being opportunists and as kind of pretenders. They see them as being kind of soulless, not really caring for people under them, although the argument nobles really don't either. But there's this idea that the nobleman is there to sort of act as like a servant father figure to the people beneath them, and see this middle class not having that sort of honor, if you will. And then they look down on the workers as being wretches and basically brutish, mean, uneducated, basically all the negative stereotypes in society. So there's a lot of animosity brewing, and it almost, in some cases, did lead to revolution because of the Soviet Union, but other places it almost led to revolution. And the only reason it doesn't happen is because, frankly, social welfare programs, a lot of things started changing. Wages went up. People started being treated better. They weren't struggling to survive anymore. There was a lot of safety precautions put in place. Basically, the enfranchisement of all men allowed for the changes in laws that allowed for the Industrial Revolution to affect all people. Again, universal manhood suffrage is kind of a big deal. This picture, if you guys have walked around downstairs, you've probably seen up on the walls. This is a classic example of things that are kind of a little bit crazy with child labor in the factories. You see what this kid's doing? He's standing on top of a machine, barefoot. Yeah, what if he falls to the right? Can you imagine him getting caught in that flywheel? It's going to kill him instantly. It's not to mention what's going on here is this is powering a bunch of bobbins, spinning thread. And basically what a kid's job to do, depending on their size, was to take off empty bobbins, put on new bobbins, or full bobbins, put on empty ones. Or if there was like a break in the line, they would go and they would tie the line together real quick, get their fingers out of the way, because if they accidentally looped their finger, it would pull their finger off. Yeah, I know, right? It's insane things that people thought nothing of. And of course, later there's going to be some pretty big changes. So seeing this, you can kind of understand why British Parliament would pass labor laws, limiting at first children's work hours to 12 hours a day. Wasn't that generous? And then later on, banning it outright. Now here's the thing: is there was a lot of resistance to ending child labor. Do you have any idea why that would be? Like parents are like, no, my kid needs to work. Why would they be like that? They just not like their kids?
You need money.
Right. Right, they have to have it. So you have parents lying. For instance, I believe it was the age of 12 was considered the minimum age to work. You'd have parents saying, "Oh, my kid's 12; they're clearly 6. Oh, it's really young for their age." Well, I don't know about that.
Do they let them in?
That depends. Sometimes, yeah. But eventually it's going to be abolished. Another group that we're kind of upset about the industrialization of the world was the Luddites. You guys remember the Luddites? You kind of read an article about that last week. What was that about? You guys read it? Yeah, okay, so the Luddites were a group of workers that were being replaced by machines. They were spinsters and folks like that. So machines were like putting them out of a job. So they didn't like this, obviously, you know. So they went to factories where these machines were, and they burned them to the ground. They destroyed machines, destroyed property. Okay. The article was about some of these Luddites. That's what they called themselves. Is that their name was James Love or something like that was their leader. They were executed or sentenced to death. That noise? That's the steam. That kind of whistling sound. Yeah, that's the steam in the radiator. So the Luddites, back to they were sentenced to death for breaking property. Think about that for just a second. The crime justified the punishment. This is a time where law is being rewritten. You know, people's lives are cheap, machines are expensive. People are expendable, machines are hard to replace. That's the attitude. Things are going to change, but that's the life that people were living. You know what I mean? We see all the time in the news people in situations that you think are impossible. You know, what was that? I forget where it was, but there was a baby that was flashbanged, had third-degree burns on it because somebody, there was a drug raid, which actually they were at the wrong place. They got the wrong address, and they threw a flashbang through a window, landed in the baby's crib, and went off. A flashbang, it's a type of grenade. It just makes a bright light.
Oh, so the baby didn't blow up, right?
No, it didn't kill the baby, but it had third-degree burns and was severely injured. And I don't think anyone was shot, but nevertheless, the police officer who threw the flashbang was cleared of all wrongdoing and all charges.
He get fired?
No, he's still a police officer.
Oh, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. It's more than that. It was said that it was perfectly legal for him to do that. You know what I mean? I mean, you can look at it happens all the time. Not just police actions, things like that, but just all kinds of instances where someone's fired because they, you know, basically the company is purely doing something illegal and they get away with it. It happens all the time. You can find examples. And it's like, you know, even though there are laws in place to stop it, sometimes companies get away with it because no one reports it. You know what I mean? It's hard for people to stand up and say, like, no, this is wrong. Laws are only as good as they're reported, things like that. We can kind of understand maybe where people were frustrated and angry, where this is just the norm, where this is expected that, you know, people are going to take advantage. Great example, 1819. There's a group of protesters protesting against the abuses of the factory owners, things like that. And basically this group of soldiers, in order to suppress the protest, basically shot them, killed them. You know. Protest is not something that is tolerated in a lot of cases. Even today, it's a fine line in protest. Because if you think about it, what's the difference between a protest and a riot?
Protest is like you're just trying to prove something, and then the rest is what you have to.
Okay, let's get legal here. Let's define when does it switch to one to the other? Obviously, there are large groups of people that are in one area. What's the difference otherwise?
Isn't a riot like where people wreck stuff and they like break things and set it on fire, and the protest is like just holding signs and trying to get attention?
Okay, so one, we have a clear illegal activity, which is vandalism and destruction of private property, violence. And protest is trying to prove a point. Yeah, but let's be more specific here. If one is violent, the other is non-violent. It's a non-violent gathering trying to prove a point. Okay. That's, I think, legally defining. So when does one switch to the other? Can a protest turn into a riot?
Yes.
Clearly it has happened in Ferguson. Ferguson. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So a riot is a type of protest, isn't it?
Not necessarily. A riot can also happen because people are mad and they're going out for revenge. You know. But the main difference really is that a protest, peaceful protest, you know, your objective is to draw attention to whatever it is you're trying to draw attention to, an injustice that you perceive or something like that. And usually it's by civil disobedience. I'm not going to do what the government tells me to do, but I'm not going to fight you. So, for instance, the police say, leave this area. I'm not leaving. Yeah, I'm going to disobey you. I'm going to disobey your orders. And now it's in your court. You know what I'm saying? It depends on the police reaction. In a lot of cases, what the police used to do in history is they just shoot you.
For protesting?
Yes. And so what does that cause the public to do?
Right.
Yeah, now we're mad at you. And again, one of the things we know about revolutions is it doesn't matter how well armed the government is, we will take you over. We will destroy you. We the people have more bodies to spare. Think about it. If every single citizen of the United States rose up against the U.S. Army, who wins? We do, because guess what? The U.S. Army is us. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Is some soldiers might side with the government, but how many soldiers are going to fire against their own family members? You know what I'm saying? They're not going to do that. I don't care if you're giving me order. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do what's right. You know what I'm saying? The people have the power. That's the whole idea of the social contract. We're willing to give you some power. Right? What's that? They have nukes?
Yeah,
That's true, but here's the thing: is if you nuke it, what do you in control of? Besides, how does the nuke work? Who pushes the button? See what I'm saying? No, the president has no control of that. It's military. Technically, it's commander-in-chief, you can authorize it, but no, it goes down to people. And is someone really going to willing to nuke their family? Again, these are all people. The government is not some entity of a bunch of people in suits maniacally doing this. It's not a bunch of cartoon villains. It's people. It's us. Sometimes power goes to people's heads and they can abuse it, but ultimately, it's us. You know what I'm saying? So whenever there's an abuse of power, it pushes a backlash of the people against them. This is what happens with Peterloo Massacre. People are like, really, you're killing people because they're upset? It pushes for a lot of laws to be passed protecting the rights of protesters. Now here's the thing, is you have a right to protest. You have a right to civil disobedience. But the second you become violent, suddenly, not so much. Like, there's a difference from waving a sign and beating someone over the head with a sign. You know what I'm saying? One is peaceful, one is not. A riot is when things go from peaceful to violent. Now, why this is an important distinction, okay? Riots are not about what tried and proved point. Riots are about revenge. Look at what happened in Ferguson. You had a group of people there ostensibly protesting the death of a teen at the hands of police. A kid was shot, basically. Essentially, the court, like basically what happened is that there's this whole debacle. Basically, there was a guy who supposedly just randomly attacked the police, essentially. And they're like, why would he do that? That'd be insane. Someone's going to start swinging at cops with guns. Well, it turns out that's what the coroner says happened. Like, from the studies, this is what it looks like. They released the pages. Yeah, that's what happened. So we don't know why he did it, but basically that's why the cops shot him. But people were really upset about it and started going out and getting revenge for this guy who died, started burning down houses and like stealing stuff out of like Sears and have you like that. There's a Walgreens that was burned to the ground essentially, and everything was stolen out of it. What does Walgreens have to do with a police shooting? You know, that's a riot. Riot isn't about proving a point. It's about getting revenge. It's about loss of control. A protest has a purpose. You know what I'm saying? So this is one of those things that is going to be being made a distinction here. You can't just shoot protesters because you don't like what they have to say. There's going to be a lot of emphasis to ending this, especially because we have widespread enfranchisement of men, the universal manhood suffrage. They're using their right to vote to try to overturn some of these laws, and they're successful. Suddenly, the very wealthy start to realize, wait a second, these folks have a lot of power. So one of the reasons that this starts to kind of debate is due to Methodism. Methodism is a religious tradition started by John Wesley. The idea of Methodism is this: yes, life is hard, but we are equal to the task. Let's work together to make the world a better place. Methodism aimed at turning this negative, angry backlash into let's help each other out. Things like mutual aid societies. Positive developments in basically self-improvement. You know, hard work is a Protestant value. And turning that into a let's make the most of the situation people starting to think of it as a positive aspect. How can we make things better as opposed to let's be mad about it and get revenge over it? See, one's progressive, one is negative. You know, if I'm just going to be mad about something, I'm going to stomp my feet and I'm going to start screaming, I'm going to be mad, what actually gets accomplished? Nothing. If, however, say, all right, take a deep breath, all right, this makes me upset, what can I change? How can I make it better? We can make it better. See what I'm saying? I tell this to my daughter all the time. She's only 3 and a half, she'll be 4, not too much longer. But, you know, she starts throwing a temper tantrum. I'm like, crying's not going to help you. Being upset's not going to help you. Usually she calms down. What's that? What is it? Gotcha. I do think it's funny because people tell us, oh, little girls cry if you let them. It's like saying little boys cry. Yeah, they do. Until I remember, like, back when I was a kid, it's like if a boy started crying, you got slapped. Shut up for being a girl. Because usually what they say. Because girls cry, boys don't. Actually, what true human beings cry when they're upset. It's a learned behavior.
Why do boys not cry when they're girls?
Because it's seen as a feminine trait, and guys don't want to be like girls. Because girls aren't feminine, obviously.
Are you embarrassed to cry?
Huh?
Are you embarrassed to cry?
No. Yeah. Because here's the thing: is I tell you honestly, whatever you, I generally have the attitude that just crying is never really helpful. So don't just basically keep your cool. That's my general philosophy. It's like, you know, obviously there are moments that when it's totally understandable and expected. Like someone you love dies, yeah, you're gonna cry. You're watching the end of Marley and Me, you're gonna cry. The thing is, like, you know, you try to not, because you're like, I'm not. It's a dog movie. I'm not going. You know, if it's a dog movie, what's going to happen, right? But then Owen Wilson starts talking, You're not a bad dog, you were a great dog. I was like, stop! Stop this! Just take that dagger and twist it, why don't we? But you know, that's the thing. No, I'm getting into it because, and again, this is the thing we talk about in sociology. Is a lot of what we take for granted as, well, this is just what guys do, this is what girls do. It's a learned behavior. We condition people to behave in a specific way. Crying is one of those things. It's a natural function, but we say, oh, we don't do that in certain situations. And seriously, we do that with every biological function. How many biological functions that we do are like we don't talk about it? Because it's gross and embarrassing. And why? It happens. Who happens?
Girls don't poop. Boys poop. See, girls cry, boys poop.
I don't. It's because all of the sadness just getting collected into one spot.
Oh my god.
Aren't you glad we're recording this on YouTube? And I just like to point out that the internet is forever. Like every single thing is getting archived for posterity. So you know there is some historian who is peering over this like 15,000 years from now to figure out what life was like in the early 21st century. And they're going to be listening to this and they're going to be like, my word. That's right, we're talking about you, Mark. Someone a long time from now named Mark is freaking out. We're in your closet, Mark. We can see you. Anyways, we'll call that good for today. Oh heavens.